Remember when Jesus went to his hometown, they said, aren't you Mary's boy? Because they did not want him to be the Son of God. Because they wanted him to be one of us. He said, I could do no good things. They paralyzed the abilities of the Son of God because they did not want to use his title. We live in a world now where younger people, you want your children to call you Janet. And we called it mother. You undermine your daughter's ability to respect you unless she calls you mother. Titles mean something. Yes. I worked hard to be, and I get offended. I get offended because I went to school many, many years to be called Dr. Floyd. I get real upset. I went to school. I owe the government money today for 2 letters.
I'm talking about. You probably that trillion. You probably that
thousands of dollars. But unless you call me Attorney Floyd, I can't do legal work for you. Janet doesn't know much. Unless you call. Janet can't do much for you, but the prophetess can do some stuff. So titles matter, black folk. It does matter.
My wife says something.
You get the power of it.
My wife says something profound when someone challenged her on that. She says, senator is a title. Congressman is a title. Mayor is a... Why are we the only ones that despise our titles when the world esteems and applauds theirs?
And there's some power. You can't get the power of the gift. The power of the gift. If I'm Janet, I can't do anything, but the woman of God can do something. So when you pull on me, when you let me be the woman of God, you get me. I tell my members all the time, if you want me to be a woman just like you, then you don't get anything. But call me pastor. You hold me to accountability, and you can get the divinity out of me.
A lady said to me walking out the door, she said to me walking out the door, she said, how you doing, George? I said, you see George, you slap George. Don't you ever. I ain't sleeping with you. I'm not fuddy-duddy with you.
That's what you get when you talk to George. Crazy talk.
I ain't heard that one in a long time.
Now,
can I say something real quick?
That's what you get when you talk to George. George what?
And can y'all be in agreement with this? You've never got anything like this anywhere else, have you? Can we applaud Mr. Bloomer for that? What you say? This real talk here tonight.
This real talk.
This real talk here.
We ain't come here to play now.
Now, I want to say something.
Yes, sir.
It's real talk.
Years ago, there was a prophetic word, and I know that many have made him an anathema in the church, and that's Bishop Carlton Pearson. When people start thinking differently, we have a tendency of demonizing thought. We didn't ask you to agree, but we need to be like other ethnic groups and embrace our difference, not to be covered, but to seek to understand it. Yeah. We are looking at an election where God has brought, and I prophesied this in a book in 1996, the first African-American president. And that was not divine through the stars. I heard that through the Holy Ghost and wrote it. And when President Obama took out Hillary, people in my church was disturbed with me and black people because I says, I pray that President Obama does not win. And they said, why? I says, because the other part of the prophecy says that the African-American community will suffer greatly because of him, and he will be as a puppet on the strings of manipulation. And I saw a great depression coming to the country, and the African-American community would see upwards of 20 to 50% in unemployment, and families forced to live together and lose their homes. We are now looking at another election at the time of this recording where the front runner is seemingly starting to be another African American in the Republican Party. What is God saying? So when God began to raise up men like ourselves, I didn't put master in front of my name just because I woke up one day and felt like that was something to do. It was a time that had come to awaken the prophets. The prophets awakened during the times of famine. Nobody called the prophets during the megafest.
Nope.
No one called the prophets during the church ages of great prosperity. No one called on the prophets during that time, and neither did Israel. But during the time of famine and calamity, the prophets will begin to rise. This is why this took place at this time, because this is the beginning of something that is getting ready to happen among prophets, because the church is going to need the prophet. The White House need the prophets. The nations need the prophet. And whenever the prophets spoke a word, whether it was the widow woman that they were about to take her 2 sons to be bondsmen, the word of the prophet to a devastating people is entrepreneurship. Go borrow the vessels, borrow not a few, and start pouring the oil. The prophet is about to release the spirit of entrepreneurship in the African American community, that we will stop becoming a community of consumers and a community of producers.
And I believe that was the reason why a few years ago when I called you with C-SPAN wanting to do this whole production, that it couldn't happen. And that God would open up a door for men and women, the prophets, to be able to speak to the president, to people in, if you're prophet to the nation, what nation? To the church? No, none of the prophets in the Bible was called to church people. They were called to the nations.
And Bishop, I just left Swaziland. Prophet Mosley, many people don't know this. A nation could not have a king. Prophet Mosley spoke to the boy that he would be king and crowned king in Swaziland. I went there afterwards, began prophesying to members of the royal family. They didn't ever think they would have a king. I went back and gave a prophetic word to His Majesty and the Queen Mother. And they changed their currency on the prophet's word and wrote on their inscription of their currency, God is our source. Today, Swaziland is the only nation in Africa that has a monarch that is not a figurehead. They welcome the prophets in the kingdom of Swaziland.
Prophet Mosley?
When we were in Swaziland, and I'll say this real quick, it was an extraordinary experience, and so much so that King Sobhuza was his dad. And they brought us in during the night and all of this. And at that time, God spoke to this young man who now is the king. It is the oldest surviving kingdom. But going back to your original question, or what, my whole life, and I believe that all of us will agree on this, it's about serving. I'm a servant, and every one of us that has a title, you can't have one without a testimony. And I think the challenge is today that we give people titles and we don't know anything about them, their testimony, their experience. And so it is important, and it does validate. Well, I came along when the preacher and the mother in the church was the highest calling the woman could have, was a mother, and the bishop, all of that. But you know what? They told me, said, you know what, boy? Because you don't call anybody like that. Boy, you know what? Just do the will of the Lord. Now, G.T. Haywood, Bishop of Charles Harrison Mason, Maria Woodworth Etter, I can go down the list. These people were never caught up with titles, but they operated. I knew women that could stand right on this platform, and you could hardly stand next to them, because they had the testimony that they had been with Jesus. And I'm looking for people that have, he said, I'm looking for people in this last hour that has a relationship with the Father. Because when you have a relationship with the Father, you have that authority, and you go places. I go to the cleaners, and they want to keep my clothes because somebody cleaned them and got healed. I don't want to get started in here.
Yeah. You know, this is extremely powerful. As I 5 years ago, 5 or 6 years ago, I invited Prophet Mosley to come and minister here. He was already into his ministry. He stopped. I was sitting over there, and he walked over to where I was, and he said, there's a television show for you. There are 3 of them. They'll come and fizzle out, but there's one. And when God moves you into this position, He's given it to you because you're going to do with it what no one else has done. It's already in operation. It's already going. Now, it wasn't going. It was a prophet seeing. A prophet seeing. So TBN offered me a show like this. Fizzled out. TCT offered me a show like this. Fizzled out. Inspirational Network, David Sorrello, not only offered me a show like this, but gave me the entire facility to start a church for them in Charlotte. And I just couldn't move. The next year we was under a tent. We had a tent service, and Prophet Mosley came back, and I normally cook for the guests who were coming in, and when the service was over, we were sitting down inside in the trailer. And he looked up and he said, those things are things that's come up, keep on fizzling out. But there's one that's coming this time. And God is going to use you to expose and to repair and rebuild the breaches, those broken areas. Now I knew exactly what he was talking about, because my gifting is getting people on television, getting the conferences going. That's my gift. That's my gift. But I had no idea that he was prophesying, rejoice in the word. Had no idea. But I knew the day that I got the job who I was going after. And I plugged my ears up because people would say negative things to me that some people would say, or they hear things, and I would say, I don't want to hear that. I say it all the time. No. Because I have to stay focused on doing what God calls me to do. It's not about you. It has nothing to do with you. It's about what God has called me to do. And the Lord spoke to me in that hour, and I called Prophet Mosley, and I said, I have a opportunity for you. He said, what's that? I said, I want you to be on TBN. He said, I said, yeah, I want you to be on TBN. I'm going to open this door for you to go on TBN because I believe that you're about to make an entrance into the earth that you never had before. He said, okay, do what you do. I appreciate that. Thank you. He's a gentleman.